My husband was trying to convince me on this, probably for 2 years. He was dreaming about it, bringing it up, almost to the point that we would argue about it.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, because I was just doing what I was supposed to do, I was going down the path and doing what my parents taught me to do, and we got more stressed out, and then he was in the hospital for a stomach problem. And he was in the hospital for 10 days, and I sat next to him, and it was like a beacon went off in my life. And I sat there and I thought, what am I going to wait for? Am I going to wait for my husband to have a heart attack in his 30s? Am I going to wait for him to get so ill that that's going to change my mind and it's going to wake me up? And honest to God, it was like a beacon of light shone, and it lit up the path, and we turned to each other in the hospital, and I promised him, I said, this is over. All of this, where you're going to get out of here, everything's going, we're not living one more day like this. And luckily I got the second chance. See, I got that. Luckily I got that. And what he had wasn't serious, but that is what the stress was doing. It was damaging our relationship. We got home so late, we never ate a healthy meal. I got irritable, as women tend to do. My husband got quiet, which men tend to do. And you just saw things splintering, not breaking, just splintering. And when you see that, it's worth trying to fix that by getting rid of all the baggage, metaphorically, and literally, just eliminating all of it. It just reduces it down to the best of things. And what was the best of things about Rob and I is that we loved each other, and we supported each other, and we were the perfect fit for each other. And when you land in a place where you don't know the language and everything is foreign, you don't even know what to buy at the grocery store. Everything is different. You rely on each other in ways that just make everything better and stronger. And that is what glued things back together. Glued it in a way like when you first meet your spouse, that fun part. I think Costa Rica brought a lot of that back.
This is episode 46 of the Ownstream podcast, featuring Nadine Pisani.
Welcome to the Ownstream podcast. I'm Teresa Scoba.
And I'm Stephen Shelley.
And we had an amazing conversation with Nadine Pisani. Wow! It was just like inspiring from start to finish. We were just reflecting that, we choose these quotes for the beginning of the call, and basically for the beginning of the episode where we, want to have something that kind of shows it's a synopsis of somebody's experience or just something inspiring. And basically there was just everything she was saying in this conversation
was like an amazing quote.
Was beautiful and inspiring. So Nadine and her husband, Rob, moved to Costa Rica a little over 10 years ago. And they really, they were just basically tired of living a life unfulfilled, a life in sleep, as Nadine talks about so beautifully, just that she, didn't remember years of her life that she was giving away to work that did not fulfill her, and a lifestyle that surrounded that work that was exhausting for her husband, got very sick. And she describes beautifully, that turning point as she just did, that just, it's enough. It's enough. Like, when am I going to live my life? When am I going to be happy in my life? And what a beautiful story these two have, and what a poignant time for us to be having this interview with Nadine when we're just about to go to Costa Rica in a couple weeks.
Yeah, the timing on this is amazing. We reached out to her some time ago to set up this interview, and there's all kinds of media online about them. They've been interviewed here and there, and some of those are video interviews. We'll link to at least one I have seen, and the environment where they live is really beautiful. But this was very special because it's just her, and she is so witty and so eloquent, and tells their story very, very well. But it's really kind of from her point of view, which is very, very interesting. She's also quite a writer. She has recently published her 4th book, which is all about their journey building their own home in Costa Rica, which now is also a B&B, which people can and do quite fervently attend because it's beautiful. And we actually looked at it potentially to stay there when we were down there in February or January, February. And it's booked solid. There's no way to get in. I mean, it's really a hot property. So, but yeah, the timing on this is extraordinary. And so you'll notice throughout this conversation that our questioning, our part of the interview is we're asking a lot of questions kind of for us, as well as just kind of interested at large as people contemplate creating more freedom and abundance in their lives. And I think a lot of people end up thinking like, well, maybe I could live somewhere where the expenses aren't as high. Maybe I don't need to work so much, grab some of my time back. And it just so happens that there are a lot of places where you can do that are breathtakingly beautiful, Costa Rica being one of them. And there's dozens of other reasons to go there, which we can get into at a later date. But nevertheless, we're less than 3 weeks away from getting on a plane to fly down to Costa Rica. And so the timing of this is impeccable. And, that's just how it goes, I think. When you walk a path and you understand the power of energy and vibration and how all these mysterious, wonderful forces begin to collude on your behalf, helping, steering, guiding, shining the light forward. And so we experienced that today in this conversation with Nadine. And if living abroad or changing your lifestyle in a very dynamic and kind of sudden way, as they did, is interesting to you, then you're going to love this. And the last thing I'll say is Nadine is so accessible. She's not at all pretentious or, oh my goodness, she doesn't create the air of that she's extremely special or anything. She's actually very down to earth, very warm, very fun to talk to. She's really funny. So I think this will be a joy to listen to for people who are interested in moving and exploring, and particularly Costa Rica, but also just people kind of interested in hearing yet another story about someone who took dramatic, irrevocable action in the direction of something exciting and joyful for them, and having that turn out really, really great.
Yeah, I mean, Nadine's descriptions of Costa Rica are so beautiful, and not just what you would expect, that the landscape is beautiful, and her descriptions of the natural world in which she lives are just, they just seize you with joy, but she also talks about the people, what a different, very beautifully about how people treat one another, and how she as a person saw that she might change as a human being living around people like Ticos, as they're called, Costa Rican people, and contrasting that with her Western lifestyle and how she treated other people, and just, how she lived her life in a total blur. But she also says, and this is important, that, it's not about moving to Costa Rica. Her mission, her calling, as it's very clearly emerged just through putting her pen to paper. She has a beautiful morning practice where she writes fresh first thing in the morning with the sounds of nature and life emerging around her. And, this calling has come through her. And she really says it's not about Costa Rica. It's not even about moving somewhere specifically. It's about being happy, about living in a way that makes you happy and fulfilled. And when she started just blogging, it's such a beautiful story. We've heard it a few times, and she just started writing about her experience in a very casual way because she was interested in her passion. She wanted to share the joy she was having. People just magnetized to it. People were attracted to it like nothing else. Because she said, I was so surprised to find out that, that other people felt this way, that other people were unhappy and were seeking a way out. And so it's really that story too of just, finding your bliss, finding what makes you happy and going for that. And that's really what I think Nadine's mission is to help people get there.
So we'll turn it over to Nadine. Before we do, very quickly, we have just released our Best of 2017 episode. Woo! It is really, really caught on. That's very exciting. One way you could help us is to leave us hopefully a 5-star review on iTunes. We are actively building our audience and trying to expand our visibility, reaching more people, inspiring more people, and amplifying the voices of people like Nadine and all the folks on our Best of 2017 episode, about 20, 25 people. So it will take you a minute or two. Just go to iTunes, find us, Ownstream Podcast. You'll see a tab there on our page that says ratings and reviews. Click that 5th star, the furthest one over on the right, we hope, and maybe tell us a little bit very briefly about how we've inspired you, what you like about the podcast. That would be really, really great. We would be deeply grateful if you did that for us. That would be a great gift that you could give to us. So we'll be back afterwards to wrap up. But until then, enjoy this wonderful conversation with Nadine Pisani.
Great. Well, Nadine, welcome to the Ownstream podcast. We are so thrilled to have you on today. It's really awesome to meet.
I'm happy to be here. This is very exciting. I love to share my story, and I love to hear about yours. You're a nomad as well.
We sure are.
We sure are.
And as you know, we're headed to Costa Rica in a few weeks, so this is an especially exciting time for us to connect with you. Yeah, it's just perfect. And as it worked out this way, because I learned of you actually a few months ago, or a couple months ago, when we were staying at my mom's house, the house I grew up in San Diego, and I went to this new coffee shop around the corner and was just talking about how we're living out of a van and we run this business and we're headed to Costa Rica to explore a potentially a new life there. And the barista was like, "Oh, you have to talk to this person. You have to read her book." And he wrote down "Happier Than a Billionaire." I don't know her name, but she's so funny, and you're gonna love this. Like, it's so much good information. It's exactly what you want to hear. And so
I love this story because it involves coffee too. So this is the perfect setup for Costa Rica.
I've seen your coffie dance video. It's really fun.
Oh, heavens. Oh my. Yeah. I just finished my last book, and that was just excitement and fun and the release of that. And I don't mind being silly. That's for sure.
That's awesome. So, well, anyway, I reached out to you, and it turned out through the holidays and everything that this is the time to talk, and it's just so perfect. So really excited. And we've done a little reading on your story, and maybe we talk on Ownstream with people who have changed their lives radically, usually, and followed their bliss, moved on to a happier life, moved on to a more purposeful life, usually. And so we'd love to hear a bit about we know that you grew up in New Jersey, and you and your husband were living in Pennsylvania before you decided to move to Costa Rica, and that you had some jobs that were not really the most satisfying. We'd love to hear about, we lived in New York for a long time and did the 10 hour a day lifestyle and the pace there. So we'd love to hear about, what your life was like before 2007 when you moved to Costa Rica. What was going on?
I think it was probably like a lot of people's lives in the States. Just did what I was supposed to do. I went to school. I went to graduate school. I became a chiropractor. I amassed a very large amount of student loan in the process of that.
I've done that too. Yeah.
Yeah. So you have that on you, and you do the right thing. Me and my husband, we both worked, and I don't know why work always becomes more work. Do you ever find that? Like, it never becomes less work. It's an 8-hour day, and then it becomes a 9-hour day, then it becomes a 10-hour day. And in our 30s, I think what was lucky about our profession was that I saw people every day who were ill in some respect, their knees or their back or things like that. So I knew that you can't bank time. You can't just say, I'm going to save my healthy knees and my healthy shoulders for when I'm 65. And that's when it's all going to happen. And that's when I'll get my camper van and I'll travel across the country. I'll do it at 70. Because my patients weren't, they were breaking down and they couldn't do the things they wanted to do. So it was always in my face every day that this is what can happen. And gosh, guys, the life didn't fit. It wasn't a bad life, but it just didn't fit. And I have a good analogy now to it because of the solar eclipse that just happened and the totality, the parts of the country where you saw the totality of it, the entire solar eclipse. It was like the life I imagined and my actual life was so far off. Like the sun was there and the eclipse was there. And I was always trying to get to that person. And for a while you imagine it. And I think you can imagine that the rest of your life. You can imagine that person that you could have been or you were being. So as the totality happened and, these lucky people got to see the sun, right with the eclipse, and it was perfect. I feel like that exactly is what I was looking for. And when we just said we were done and we were going to move somewhere, and we didn't care if we spoke the language, which is a really big deal for people because everybody thinks of the Caribbean or places where it's just the language. But if you just put it all on the table, if you just sat in bed with your spouse and you kind of dreamed and you looked up at the ceiling and you said, where could we go? And if any place was possible, would we do it? And there was just a moment in time I was brave. And I really, truly mean that. A moment in time. There wasn't a lot of planning. We just turned to each other and said, let's just do what everybody dreams about doing. And in that process, every single person we know said we were crazy. My parents thought we were nuts. We just paid off $200,000 in student loan. So we're 10 years in our practice. We just paid off our loans. This is the time everything's supposed to happen. You hire an associate, you get another secretary, and we just said no. And we did the most ridiculous, reckless, and romantic thing that I think we could ever have done. And we just chose a different path. And that's pretty much it in a nutshell.
Well, so you guys were chiropractors for a decade then? You had to practice?
The magic number, 10. My husband was 12, mine was 10, and that's the magic number everybody in the career hopes for. 10 years something, and they even write books about this, 10,000 hours or 10 years, or they pick a number, and that's when the fireworks happen, and you're going to amass your fortune, and things are going to all line up, and everything you worked for, this is the moment when it's all going to skyrocket. And we literally left right the time when everything was supposed to grow. We completely shrunk our life to one that just fit.
Wow, it's so fascinating. I haven't heard that 10 years thing before, but that exact thing happened to me where I got to the place in my career where I got the job that I was supposed to really want. It was the pinnacle job for me. And I was in a totally different field. I was in social justice policy and criminal justice. But I got this job that it would be the job, and I was like, I don't want this job. I'm not happy.
How do you tell people that?
Yeah.
How do you, first you have to admit it to yourself, which is soul crushing, that everything that you worked for didn't bring you the happiness and joy that you thought it was. And now you have to tell people. Yeah. Now you have to explain it to people. And that's just not how it goes. You're supposed to walk the walk. You're supposed to get headaches and have stomach aches and be in a commute and live that kind of rat race life. You're not going to get anybody or very few people who are going to say, yeah, you're right. Maybe this isn't the right path after all of those years. Those people you're not going to find. And when people write me and they say nobody likes this idea, sometimes I like to say, well, maybe it's a good idea. Nobody likes it. Maybe you're just an outlier. And I think when I moved here, I wasn't so different. I moved to around a lot of people who did the same thing I did. So I wasn't an outlier. There's people who just look for a different life. And there's nothing wrong with that. They just want to get as much as they can. I always tell people when I came here, it was like I smelled the colors. Everything was saturated. And I wish I could have said that about my life. I wish I could have found that when I was working as a chiropractor. Maybe if I dug a little harder, I could have. But there's palm trees here, guys, and this is so much better. So I pick Costa Rica.
Yeah. So that turning point, that moment of inflection when you had enough, was that more just a kind of cascade of time that wore itself out and you were just at a place of we just can't do this anymore? Or was there something specific that took place then that was a catalyst? Just trying to kind of understand more that moment, that turning point.
My husband was trying to convince me on this, probably for 2 years. He was dreaming about it, bringing it up, almost to the point that we would argue about it.
Oh, wow.
And because I was just doing what I was supposed to do. I was going down the path and doing what my parents taught me to do. And we got more stressed out. And then he was in the hospital for a stomach problem. And he was in the hospital for 10 days. And I sat next to him. And it was like a beacon went off in my life. And I sat there and I thought, what am I going to wait for? Am I going to wait for my husband to have a heart attack in his 30s? Am I going to wait for him to get so ill that that's going to change my mind and it's going to wake me up And honest to God, it was like a beacon of light shone, and it lit up the path. And we turned to each other in the hospital, and I promised him, I said, this is over. All of this, where you're going to get out of here. Everything's going. We're not living one more day like this. And luckily, I got the second chance. See, I got that. Luckily, I got that. And what he had wasn't serious. But that is what the stress was doing. It was damaging our relationship. We got home so late. We never ate a healthy meal. I got irritable, as women tend to do. My husband got quiet, which men tend to do. And you just saw things splintering, not breaking, just splintering. Mm-hmm. And when you see that, it's worth trying to fix that. And by getting rid of all the baggage, metaphorically, and literally, just eliminating all of it, it just reduces it down to the best of things. And what was the best of things about Rob and I is that we loved each other, and we supported each other, and we were the perfect fit for each other. And when you land in a place where you don't know the language and everything is foreign, you don't even know what to buy at the grocery store. Everything is different. You rely on each other in ways that just make everything better and stronger. And that is what I think glued things back together. Glued it in a way like when you first meet your spouse, that fun part. I think Costa Rica brought a lot of that back.
Mm-hmm. And so he'd been planning this. And I read a little bit of your first book, and I remember you saying something like he had all these things mapped out, and he had some spreadsheets, or he had profiles of the countries or something like that. Like, tell us a little bit about how you ended up choosing Costa Rica. Like, did you guys have a vision for the type of place you wanted to go, or did he have that vision? Were there things you were looking for in particular about a place? Like, how did you end up deciding to go there?
I think when you grow up in the Northeast in all those winters, you're motivated to not have that. What's going on now? A bomb cyclone in the Northeast.
I was going to say, we're doing this interview as our friends in Brooklyn are being pummeled by ice and snow.
It's insanity. So, you when you dream, you tend to dream of warmer places when you grow up in the Northeast. So we did this at 37. That was 10 years ago, and we didn't have money to last a lifetime. We weren't retiring, so we had to go to a cheaper place. And you're thinking of Caribbean, but a lot of things there are expensive. And then he's crazy, he's saying El Salvador and all these things. And then there's political unrest there, so we wiped that off the table. And a patient said to him, "Well, did you ever think about Costa Rica? That's a really cool place." And I never really thought much of it. And like most things we do in life, he just said, "Hey, let's just get tickets and go." So we just got tickets and went, and that was it for us. It happened all so quick, and in a way, I know people plan this for a very long time. And I think you really have to be honest with the type of person you are. Because if I really plan this, like if I just sat down and said 2 years, it's this day, and this is how we're going to do it, I can guarantee you I would never have done it. I can just guarantee you. You can overthink things. I am a neurotic mess. I will overthink. So I in the grocery store, what type of skim milk? It's horrible the way my brain works. So, and I think he knew that. I think he knew that if we were going to do it, it had to be. Just don't look so much into it. And back then, there wasn't a lot of information on Costa Rica. There weren't blogs out. And if you did read something, oh, my God, you're going to get robbed and kidnapped. And, the monkeys are going to chase you. And it was always so awful. And we promised ourselves when we came here, especially a life that I can the rat race, you can be really pessimistic for some reason, especially myself, it drains you. I said, I'm going to see this adventure for what it really is. I'm not going to ruin it by always looking at how much better the U.S. could have been. I'm not going to straddle the two countries. So it was really important to eliminate everything. No house, no car, no job, nothing to come back to. So I couldn't straddle it. So I couldn't come here and say, oh, well, I'll just go home. There was no going home. I had to be here. I had to be in the moment. I had to love this adventure for better or worse. And I had to wake up. I had to wake up Because whatever I was doing before, I was asleep. I was asleep in that office for 10 years. For 10 years, I didn't. My 30s are a blur.
Yeah.
They're a blur. They're a work. I think more of that commute. I remember my scrubs. I remember being cold, walking from the house to the car in the winter. I remember the gas station I'd get a cup of coffee from. I remember it was gray. That is a lot of my 30s. Mm-hmm. And I came here and I remember every moment of every day. Why did that happen? I don't know. I just think I found a place that the slower pace works for me. Mm-hmm. I'm around nature. I grew up in New Jersey, near an oil refinery. So I didn't get a lot of that. So maybe that has something to do with it. It's blue skies here and palm trees. If you wake up with that every morning, I challenge you to be in a bad mood. I challenge you. It's almost impossible. So to answer your question, I think to pick this place, it was all very fast. It was all very reckless, but it was a happy ending to the story.
Well, and I think I love what you said about not planning too much. And it goes back to what you said before when you so beautifully described the experience with your husband in the hospital, that it was a moment. Mm-hmm. You said, a moment opened up. It's like a moment of grace, right? Where like something else entered and said, like, no more, and I think about the difference between that kind of feeling and opening up and listening within, then compared with like, I'm going to think my way through and push my way through and grind my way through 10 years of a career that brings me no joy. And it's like, you don't even remember it because you were probably in your head all the time. And that's what I think about versus like this kind of grace, this kind of opening up to something else and some other kind of life. And that does happen in a moment. It is living in that moment and opening up to that I think allows change. And it sounds like it was that way for you.
It's true. I like to think that, there's before and afters in your life, before and after high school, before and after college, before and after your spouse. I'm sure before and after children. There's always these dividing times in your life. Mm-hmm. There's before and after Costa Rica for me. But I see my life almost like a seesaw. And when big moments of change happen, they happen because of a grain of sand that tilted that saw. Mm-hmm. It didn't happen from a monumental thing. It happened a grain of sand. When my husband was in the hospital, the light came on. It was a moment. It was a grain of sand. And that's what tilted my life. And I know now you don't look for big explosive moments because they're very far and few. You don't look for the fireworks. You look for the quiet moments. You look for the tiny moments. And I think maybe the States, when we have so much there, so much abundance, so much of everything, just the salad dressing, I'm like blown away. The salad dressing aisle.
It's a great metaphor.
When we came here, I never forget. We went to the grocery store, and my husband's like, "Well, I want ranch, but this kind of ranch." It was Thousand Island. It was one. It was one Thousand Island. One of the Thousand Island, which there's a lot of the one of things here, and I just laughed. I laughed because it made my life so easy. I wasn't distracted. That was your choice. That or nothing. Right. And I think that the abundance of the States and the blessings and sometimes the noise of the noise of how much stuff you get to have, how many choices you get to make, the confusion that it brings. Maybe to a mind that's a little anxious like mine is, I think it complicates things. So if you can pare it down to a quieter place where you don't have those type of distractions, you have just quieter moments. You have just mental quiet moments, and if you're looking for happiness, I really think you need to find it in quieter moments. You can go to a concert and there's like this exhilaration and adrenaline and jump up and down and sing, and it just like your whole body tingles. I think that's fleeting. But to look for happiness for me, I needed to find a forest. How crazy is that? I needed animals around me. I needed to zip line. I needed to hike waterfalls. I needed to swim under them. Mm-hmm. And then it all started flooding back because those are moments of helium. They just fill your lungs and you just get lifted. And I spent too many years in that office feeling like I was wearing cement shoes, always just clogging away, never making a stride, a small step, but never a stride. And here it's just, there's a lot of gifts this country gave me. And that's when I write about it, I truly mean the love that I have. I got a lot back from this country than I ever thought I would get.
I'm struck by the concept that you talked about not straddling and about being just completely all in, and something that we call, at least in our kind of vernacular, burn the boats. Just like there's no way back. We're going all in, and this is it. We're doing this. And maybe you could tell us kind of what that looked like for you. Did you guys have some big fire sale getting rid of your furniture, or maybe you took it all and gave it away? I'm curious. I think some specifics on that are really helpful, because we've done similar things like that, and I think sometimes we get so identified and attached to our stuff and our lifestyle that hearing somebody say this is exactly what we did is very eye-opening, because then we can really digest what was that really like, and the image of you guys showing up in Costa Rica with just empty bags is pretty exciting. Tell us more about that.
I think it was an interesting time, because I honestly thought it was going to take longer for it to happen. I mean, we had to sell 2 practices. That's an odd thing. Wow. It's an odd thing you have to do. Yeah. So, you put them up for sale, and I thought that would take years. It happened right away. So that was weird. And my husband sold first. Mine sold second, so now we're unemployed. So that was just frightening. And then the house, we had to sell the house. And this was 2007. Things were changing then, if you remember. Mm-hmm. Things were foreclosing then. People's houses were going for sale, but it was before the crash, okay? So there were these weird things that were happening in our neighborhood. Houses were going up for sale, a lot. So we put a for sale sign by owner. I'm like, well, if they have to come to see across the street, they're going to see my for sale for owner.
Oh, that's
how long,
right.
Yeah, why not, right? So we did that, and geez, it sold right away. So I'm like, oh my God, we don't have anywhere to go except to go. We have no choice. We looked at each other like, no job, no house, no car. It's all gone. We sold everything in the house or gave it away, gave it to charity. The only thing I cried about was a ficus tree, because that ficus tree was given to me by my husband, who was my boyfriend back in chiropractic school. I practically tossed gasoline on that thing. I'm horrible with plants. They always die. So it lived year after year after year. It grew huge and tall and beautiful. And I bawled. And my husband said to me, well, there's actual ficus trees in Costa Rica everywhere. We don't have to plant them. They don't have to be in a house. Right. They'll be right outside your door. And what a crazy thing to say. What a funny thing to say. I thought, that is true. He gave me this plan at a time when we were dating, and now we're going to a place where it's in the ground for years, feeding and growing and providing nutrients. And I wiped my tears away, and we closed the door to that house for the last time. And we had a cat and a dog and a few suitcases, and that was it. And that's when the adventure started.
Wow. And on the other end of that, in Costa Rica, what did you guys have? A lot of times people are afraid of making change, right? And I know that you guys the title of your book includes, here I have it, Happier Than a Billionaire, Quitting My Job, Moving to Costa Rica, and Living the 0-Hour Work Week. So I'd love to hear. I know you've developed various creative pursuits since then, but when you got there, did you guys have a place that you were going to? Did you have work you were planning to do? What did you have on the other side of that when you took that leap?
We had enough money to last for around 7 years. Okay. We lived frugally from like $800 to $1,000 a month. We're like, okay, we can last 5 to 7 years, and then we'll figure it out. Okay. That's what we're going to do. And we'll just, when I'll circle back to this about living frugally, but when we got there, I was really fearful I would be a chiropractor again. I was really fearful that I would fall back to that to make a living. And that scared me because I wanted to write. I wanted to pursue other things. I wanted to decompress. And I didn't want that hanging over my head. I wanted to walk away from it, for good or for bad. I mean, I honor it. I honor what I did. I was really good at it. But it was just time to put it to bed. So when we landed, it was funny because we bought a car, but then we realized we couldn't afford the gas for the car all the time. So then we bought a $700 scooter to take us everywhere, which was So to fill up the car was like $80 in gas, and the scooter was $6. So we would take the scooter everywhere to buy groceries and go on the volcanoes and these small trips, and the car would be for longer journeys. So we had to make major adjustments. We lived in places over the years that the community well went dry and there was no water at all in the house. We lived without water. We lived in places where there was little electricity. We've sacrificed a lot to live as cheaply as possible. So it was, do you remember when you were broke? Remember when you're just broke and you find a way? Mm-hmm. You find a way because your back's against a wall. You find a way because you don't have the extra money to go to a restaurant. You make better meals. That was another thing. Every meal, and to this day, 99.999 meals I eat, I cook myself. Mm-hmm. Going out to dinner is a luxury. And going out to dinner should be a luxury. When we grew up, it was a luxury. I remember my parents didn't always go out to dinner. Yeah. And it was a different way of life. You ate home. You ate with your family. You ate at the dinner table. And we've become so rushed that you almost think that should be your way of life. And that's an expensive way of life. And it's especially expensive if you live here in a tourist area. Mm. So we just couldn't do things like that. And all of that was okay. People ask me if I miss things like that. And I'm like, are you kidding me? I don't miss that at all. I loved having these moments. When we first moved to Costa Rica, we lived on top of a mountain 4,000 feet high, where the air was like 75 degrees all year round. And it was crisp. It was crisp air. And we lived near a forest where a kinkajou jumped on my window. Mm-hmm. And coyotes ran in my yard. And there were wild horses. I'd wake up and there he is eating my bushes, a horse outside my window. These insane things were happening. And it was just a life that I loved and I was so attracted to, that all those other things that tried to fill my empty, tired soul, I just didn't need anymore. So if you're able to really do that, if you're able to let go of those things, those are the people who do okay here. When the expats come and they're okay with not having a bagel, they're okay with not having the best slice of pizza, they're okay with realizing they may be in the bank for 2 or 3 hours. God only knows. It could take that long. They seem to do okay. And I was ready for that, though. I was open to it. That's a better analogy. I was open to it. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, nice. So you guys land in Costa Rica, and I guess eventually you realize, like, maybe some new ideas or some creative impulses began to form around maybe building a business online, writing things. What were sort of the first forays into building an audience around the new lifestyle you were creating? And maybe in that, was there a point where you realized, like, wow, chiropractic and that whole world, that whole life that I thought was going to be me is totally in the rearview mirror?
When we moved, since there wasn't a lot of things about Costa Rica, and there wasn't Facebook groups or even many blogs or anything like that, when I started my blog, I wanted to write truthfully and honestly how I felt, and I was just happier. I was happy. The things I was seeing was happier. I don't know why everybody would write such miserable things, and I don't know why they're writing them and they're still here. That makes no sense to me. Go back home. So I would just make these honest blog posts that I thought nobody would ever read. I thought they was just out in the internet and they'll float out there. And all these funny things started happening because my husband's from Brooklyn, New York, which is just ridiculous when you live in Costa Rica.
We lived in Brooklyn for like 15 years.
Okay. Bensonhurst, Brooklyn, right near Coney Island.
Nice.
Yeah, so he's duct tape and everything. And it's just a way of life people in New York have. And it's just, I mean, he once tried to fix our car with a bar of soap, some slipping belts, and he stuck a bar of soap in the belts and it flung out like a missile out of our car. Like, he just does things like that. And I would watch and I would just write them. Because the things I wrote before in my free time when I was a chiropractor, I was writing like fiction, historical fiction. I would write it between patients, and I never wrote nonfiction. I definitely didn't write any comedy. But so I would sit at the computer. I was like, okay, my husband. One of my chapters was my husband is an idiot, and I just write these ridiculous things that he did, and sometimes I would share it on my blog, and they're longer blog posts, maybe 1,500 words. So who wants to read that on the internet? You know, everything's quick and fast, but people were reading them and responding to them. And then I would write emails to people and they would share them in your office email. And next thing I know, I would get emails from people saying, oh, I work at IBM and I just can't stand it any longer and I just got to get out. And so I saw that there was something to what I did that attracted people, that maybe they're thinking the same thing. I never thought that everybody was thinking this. I was kind of insular. I just thought this was what was going on in my head. And that was the moment I saw this connection with people. And the blog got bigger and bigger, and I would share more things. And, you know, the book is a funny thing because there was magic and there was luck involved in that. And I always think the best things in life are a little bit of a mix of that. I wrote the book of all these stories of that year of living up on the mountain and coming from a stressful life and decompressing and what that means and what that looks like. And so I have this manuscript and sitting on the table. I'm like, well, what do I do with this? I queried agents, and it was funny. Remember when Twilight was out? Twilight movies were out? And I remember they said, oh, this is nice, but do you write about vampires? It was interesting. I was like, oh, okay, that's a shift. But he said, well, can you self-publish? And I said, well, I don't know what that looks like, because back in our day, it meant buying books, putting them in your car, and making your parents buy them, more or less. That they're your friend, right? You remember that a long time ago? People asked me to buy their book. It's like, oh gosh, I can't do that. But that's when Amazon opened up they're self-publishing, and we laughed. And he said, well, just do it. And wouldn't it be fun? We said if we could pay our phone bill. Our phone bill was $8 a month. He goes, wow, wouldn't it be funny if we could pay our phone bill? And then we would celebrate. And we got all excited because that was the first time we would have made money outside chiropractic.
Right.
So we're like, yeah, if I could just make $8 a month, that's the success, because there wasn't success attached to the book. You know, moving to Costa Rica wasn't punctuated with a successful life. It was just punctuated with hopefully finding a happier life. So the craziest thing happened is that we were able to pay our phone bill, and then we were able to pay our electric bill. And within like 6 or 7 weeks, my gosh, a CNN reporter contacted me and put me on their internet, their travel site, CNN.com travel, did a whole thing on me and just splashed me right on the front page. And if I can't tell you how much luck that is to a writer and what that meant to my career.
Yeah. And
that is because my husband told me to do it. That is because I decided to do something and write differently than I normally did. And you know, you look back at all the steps that you took, and it was all, like I said, like you said, you know, moments. They're moments. They're decisions that take you down this windy road, and then it just happened for me. And that started a writing career, and that started a way to live here and have a little bit of an income and just share. The most happiest thing I ever did in my life was this. The thing I want to talk about most is this. The thing I want to tell people, that there is a place where you can breathe air that feels happy like helium, and you could breathe air that's joyful, and that air is like viscous air, and you breathe it in, and it covers all of your scars and fills in all the gaps and the hurt and the abrasions. And that happens here. You experience joy here. It fixes things. And if I am not somebody that happened to, I mean, I would never tell this to people. I would never share this with people if it didn't change my life, and it didn't change the life of people who've come here, like you guys. Like, it fits with people. There is a magic here that sprinkles on top of people, and it's worth talking about. It's worth sharing, because we are lost. I was lost. I was lost when I should have been the happiest. I was lost when I finally paid off my student loan. I had a house. I had a car. I had friends. I mean, why was I lost? I was just looking in all the wrong corners of my life. So I just hope that when I write about it and I talk about it, it's not necessarily for people to come here or do it. It could be moving across country. It could be moving closer to family, or it could be moving away from family. It could be getting toxic people out of your life or bringing people into your life. It's just being really honest. And like you said, the moment when you realize it, that moment's there for a reason, and it's worth investigating. And it's really what I try to tell people. It's not necessarily about Costa Rica. It's about those moments that you stitch together, that you're just trying to explore, and just go back to a time in your life that things were just simpler on a molecular level. You know, you feel it. Simpler on a blood pressure level. We all know when that was. Sometimes that was our teens. Sometimes that was our 20s. Sometimes that was when we fell in love. Sometimes that was when we got out of love. There's these moments, and we all learn from them. And I just hope people take that away, because I don't want people thinking that this place is their fix-all for everything. But it's worth coming to. It's worth vacationing. It's worth sitting on a beach and listening to the howler monkeys, because I think that's enough for some people.
So many things I want to follow up on that. I want to ask you, following up on that, to talk more about happiness. So Costa Rica is often talked about as one of the happiest places in the world, and it is now, at least. It may not have been when you first wrote your book or when you first went there, and you've used that word, and I know that you're saying, like, what it's about really is what brings each person their own happiness. It's not necessarily about Costa Rica. Maybe you can tell us, though, about what it's like there, and maybe specifically like how you found happiness there. What was it about it that made it a happy life for you there?
I think what I really attached to was just a slower life. It's a slower pace here, for good or for bad. It's a slower pace, and I think there's a time in your life where you just need that. And I'm sorry, I'm gonna shut this off. I remember going to the bank, and I remember sitting there, and there were these plastic chairs. At that time you didn't get a number, and there wasn't anything sophisticated. So there's all these plastic chairs, and you would slide down them, and you almost do the wave. When one person got up, everybody had to move down the chair. You could imagine 6 or 7 rows of these chairs, and we're all getting up doing the wave, and all getting up doing the wave. And I was just so aggravating because it was taking so long. And then these older people came in to the bank, and they all went up to the front. They all, cut the line and got to go to the front. And I was the only one who was annoyed with that. An entire room of people, because I was anxious and I wanted to get out of there, and it was hot and there was no air conditioning. And I remember that. I remember there was something wrong with me. I mean, there was just something really wrong with me that I would get. I did, 2 hours? So what? What's 2 hours? I can sit there. I can do it. So that was the first indication that I had work to do. I had work to do on myself. And what I realized was there are times, and you can make a decision. You can make a decision. You can be patient, or you can be impatient. You can be wise, or you can be stupid, and you can be kind, or you can be unkind. And ticos, which is the vernacular for Costa Ricans, ticos being the male, ticos being the female, have a very interesting connection with other people. And they make these decisions very quickly to be kind or unkind. They're mostly kind. Patient or impatient. They're very patient. And I was like, wow, wouldn't that be something? Wouldn't that be something if I can be a little bit of that, and maybe that is what I'm looking for. Maybe that's what I need. And that is how it is here. It's a slower pace. A slower pace, hopefully to most people, is the foundation for a happier pace. And if you have a happier pace, everything gets better. Your relationships get better. Your day's better. Your blood pressure's better. And it's these decisions. It's constantly these decisions that I watch Ticos make. Now, here I am. I don't speak the language at all. I'm at motor vehicles, which is the same as motor vehicles in the States. Think of the worst motor vehicles in the state. They're kind of similar to that. Long line, million lines. Now, but I don't know even what line to go on. I don't know anything. My husband and I were like children. Nobody was mean to us. Nobody was angry with us. People who didn't know English, which is everybody, they would call their cousin who knew English and hand the phone. Can you imagine that in the States?
Wow.
Can you imagine how nice that would be if when somebody didn't understand something, we didn't yell at them or criticize them. We help them. We just get them on their way because it would get us on our way. So that happened all the time to us in every government agency. And I held up the line, guys. I held up the line, okay? Like substantially. So constantly that type of care to me that which I still get here, and they laugh at all my broken Spanish and my horrible Spanish, and they all try to help me, and we all get a kick out of it. And I still have these moments where, when I need that the most, the people here follow through. They follow through, and it's such a great lesson. It's such a great way to live, and it's such a kinder way to go. And when I went back to the States for Christmas, and there's people that wound up there now. They're wound up there for a number of reasons, and I just wanted to reduce it down to just like, but it's a good, okay, but still things are good, and we're happy, and we're alive, and everything is still good. But it's hard when you're wrapped up in all that. It's hard to see that. And here it's just clear, guys. It's just clear. You just, man, it's like just a sunny day, a clear sunny day every day. And I think that can really help a worried soul, and it can help an anxious mind. And that's why I say, just come to visit, just come for a week, because I think you could take a little of that back home with you.
You've mentioned two really crucial words, I think, slower and simpler, how those are very connected to each other. I think it'd be really cool, if there is such a thing, to hear kind of a typical day for you, what that looks like, what that involves, because and juxtaposed to the life that you described earlier, going to your car, freezing cold in the morning, and spending all this time sleepwalking through the day. And that's a very common thing, I think, when you're embedded in these very mainstream type job scenarios, which in many cases are not fulfilling. So, you went from the, let's call it 60, maybe 70-hour work week, if it was anything like our situation, to what you term now the 0-hour work week. What does it look like? What is a day in the life? Or maybe if every day is so different, maybe just a general pattern of what things look like for you.
My day, I write really early. So I get up at 3, and it's just like a magical time, a.m., 3 a.m., real quiet, dark, everybody's asleep. And dark, like inkwell dark here, because there's not light pollution.
Right.
Isn't this? So the sky is full of stars, just full. And they're full of shooting stars. but we never see them when we live in cities because of all the light.
Right.
Or maybe we just spend a lot of time looking up. So you have this inkiness to the day then, and I write, and writing at 3 to 6 is like a real special time because it's just a real honest time for me where I don't, it's not work. It's just natural for me to tell my story and tell what's happening. So within those hours, there's a really great cup of coffee. I mean, just the best cup of coffee you could ever imagine. So that's part of that.
You're
and
talking
then
to a real coffee nerd here.
when it's good, it's good, guys.
Boy.
When it's good, it's good. And Costa Rica coffee is good. So I do that, and then the sun starts to come up, and the monkeys howl. The howler monkeys start to howl, and that will never get old to me. That makes me smile every single time it happens. And then the parrots come out, and there's hundreds of them that fly over. I call it the Costa Rica Air Force because they don't have a military.
That's right.
And they're loud in there, and it's funny because there's always one at the end, real far back, and he's flapping his wings harder, like he can't keep up. There's always one, and I always wait for the one because I always feel like he's the one who's just enjoying the view more. So I always look out from my window because now I have a desk. All those other books I wrote on the floor. I wrote on the bed. I wrote in the back of a car broken down. I wrote on the beach. So now that we have this house, I actually have a desk. So I look out the window and I watch as the parrots land. And then I go for a run. And I run these 2 mountains that are here. And I get to the top. And I like it because your lungs are it's hard and your lungs are breathing and your legs hurt. And I get to the top and you can see God up there, whatever your God is. I look out at the water and the distance to the horizon is 2.7 miles. That's that illusion you see as the earth bends. And I'm always interested in that 2.7 miles. Every day I look up there because you can't ever get to it. It's an illusion. There'll always be 2.7 miles. You'll just keep going and going. And I'm always imagining just you could see everything up there. You can see your past. You can see your future. You can see people you've lost. I feel a lot up there. It's there's a certain beauty of being alone on a mountain where the wind's a little rougher and things are blowing around you. And I take a moment. I just take a moment to be grateful that I have legs that ran me up there and I have lungs that can breathe and I have a place where people I've lost in the past can meet me. I know it's a kind of spiritual thing, but I think that makes me live in the moment and makes me realize that every day counts. And this is what I mean where I remember my days. I remember every day. And I also believe that if you start your day quietly, if you start your day without yelling, if you start your day hopefully without a blaring alarm going off that shocks you out of a deep sleep, I just feel like that fixes things for people. That is what really heals you. It's almost like it's the magic of the moment. It's the moment you open your eyes. And if you start it the right way, everything else falls in line. When I did this last book took quite a while to write because I wanted to get it right. And so what I just told you I did it every day. So I wrote like that every day. I ran that mountain every day. I felt gratitude every day. And the writing came so much easier. And it was something that was surprising to me. And it was something that I know happened because I made it a point to make my day start out beautifully. And that's the different thing for everybody. That's open your eyes and just turning over and kissing your husband. It's or your wife. It's waking up the kids. It's trying to have this crazy moment in the morning when I remember getting up and all these things. And if you could just pare it down and simmer it down to just what's the most important. I don't know how I could have done that when I was so anxious and worked that hard. I wish somebody would have said that to me. I wish somebody would have said, just start your morning differently. No matter how you do it, change your alarm sound, get up earlier, have write, maybe write in the morning, change your schedule. I don't know. I wish I could have found it then, but I found it here. And as long as I do that, guys, as long as I keep that up, I feel like everything else falls in line. I feel like my relationship with my husband falls in line. I feel like we discover new things about each other. I feel like I'm more patient and kinder to people. And well, that's a long answer for how my morning starts. But there you go. That's how my morning starts.
So it's still a little vague. Are you really happy being in Costa Rica? Are you cool with that? Or?
You saw right through me. You saw right through me.
No, it's beautiful. No, it's beautiful. The sound of those monkeys in the mornings and all the way nature kind of awakens itself, and to be there in the midst of that in such an extraordinary setting, I think would be quite a magic elixir for many, many people.
Well, and the contrast between the sleep you described from your life before and this totally awake and alive state, like, is that, you described it as God, something spiritual. Did you have a spiritual life before in your life, or is this something that kind of like opened up very naturally for you when you came to Costa Rica?
I didn't really have a spiritual life because I think I was just too depressed.
Yeah,
I was too depressed. I remember a doctor said to me, because I'm like, I don't know about it. Because I had medical doctors that were friends who would refer me patients. And I was like, I don't know about these hours. And they were stressed out too. And they were having problems. I'm like, I just don't know if this is what I want to do till I'm 65. I just can't even see a life. I can't see 30 years in this office more. I just can't see it. And they said, well, everybody feels that way. You need to go on antidepressants. I'm like, well, I understand that. Okay. If I need help, I need help. But the problem is it's my life. It's my life that's doing this to me. It's something I think I could fix, put it that way. It wasn't something that I think was problems and mental illness that needed that kind of help. I think there was a solution to my problem. And the solution was just to untangle it. It was like just this ball, like on those you see on TV. You drive down Route 66 and you see the big ball of twine, or a big rubber band, or whatever these attractions are. I felt like that big rubber band ball. I felt like there was no way to untangle it. How do you untangle a life? How do you untangle a career? You know what you do? You get a van, like you did, and you just go in it, and you close the door, and you start the van, and you drive. And you go. And a lot of times you don't look back. And that was another thing that was important to me. I didn't look back. I didn't want the rearview mirror anymore. I've done that enough in my life. I've done it enough where I felt like I should have done this or should have done that. In this book, I realized, there are left turns in life you never take. Specifically left turns, because we always take right turns or go straight. Left turns are a lot more work. You got to cross traffic. So we don't take left turns, a little more dangerous. And you miss out on a lot. And you need to be aware of when the left turn is. Where is it? Where is it in your life? Did you miss it? Can you turn around? Can you do a U-turn? So there's a lot of that, I think, of left turns. Did I miss things? And I live my life where I try to say, did I miss something? With this interview, in my head even, am I missing something? Am I saying exactly how I feel? Am I being truthful? These are really important things to get to the place where you want to be. I believe that you have to analyze it. And everybody has a left turn they missed. Everybody might have wanted to be a musician or a writer or an artist or a traveler or married or divorced or kids or no kids. Everybody has that. And you might not get there, but it's worth turning your vehicle in that direction. You might not always get what you want, but if you just go down that road, you're going to learn a heck of a lot of things about yourself. And you're just going to be, you're just going to be a person other people are going to want to be around.
Yeah. That's beautiful. It really, we talk a lot on the podcast about, your calling or your truth. And it just feels like that's, you've been following that. And we definitely want to, I love how you've talked about how you've written your books. I just love the portrait you've painted of, as your life was evolving there, like, writing them on the floor in the bed and a desk. And so can you tell us about, before we get toward the end of this interview, we definitely want to talk more about what your books are about. Because I know that you've written, I think 4 now, right? And there's been an evolution through those books. Can you tell us about what those books are about? And I know you had one that was just released in December as well. We want to be sure to cover that.
My books are funny narratives of living here. The first 2, Happy and the Billionaire, then Happy and Billionaire, the sequel, are just they're true stories. Although everybody says they're not true, and I'm like, if you knew somebody from Brooklyn, you would know these stories are true. So, so my husband's crazy like that, and we did such crazy fun things, and we live so good with so little. And I talk about the first one about just getting out of the rat race and rediscovering myself. The second one continues that journey. The third one's funny. That's the how-to, the Costa Rican escape manual, because I get so many emails about how I did it. So I felt compelled to give you a roadmap a little bit about buying a car or residency, but they're all real funny stories. I can't write anything serious if I wanted to at this point. Everything to me is just funny and comical. I mean, I even have, oh my gosh, a colonoscopy story in there. Got a colonoscopy here, which is like, I'm shocked I wrote it, honestly, but it's funny because people would write me and say, that's your best writing yet. So I feel pretty good about that. So the colonoscopy story landed. But my last one, I think this last one, Happier Than a Billionaire, An Acre in Paradise, it's about building this house, which we wanted to do for a long time, this bed and breakfast. And what we had to do to get there, we had to live in this while it was being built, the struggle financially to do it, how it brought back up things from a long time ago, the stress, and following the dream, the follow through of what we wanted to do. And it's my best writing, and I think it's the best book I'll ever write. I don't know if I could write a better book. And it's still all the crazy things my husband did. Listen, do you know they have the metric system here?
Yeah.
And we built a house. We made so many mistakes, surely just because of the metric system. Just because of the metric system. I can't tell you how. And it's funny, I joke about that a lot because when guests come and I put on the air conditioner, it's Celsius. And I'm like, I don't know what this number means, but 24 seems to be a good number. Like, I still don't know what Celsius is. And all the mishaps and crazy things about not really knowing a language well enough to build a house, limited budget. But I have this husband who just believes anything is possible, and he was going to pull us through this, And so, and the things that we talked about, the things I learned the year of building it. And the things that just made me, I think I grew as a writer. I grew as an expat. And I think people are going to enjoy it. I'm really happy with it, guys. I really am.
Beautiful. Sounds amazing.
I'm reading your first book now, but I'm pretty excited about that portrait of the series because I think I might just work my way through it.
Yeah. And so
that would be great.
This is a B&B, and we'll link to everything in our show notes. But tell us a little more so we have a usual coda of 3 questions we ask everybody. We'll kind of move into that now to wrap up. But tell us just a little bit about the B&B, kind of where it is and what it's like there.
Well, we have a house where we have 2 levels, and one level will sleep 6, and upstairs level will sleep 2. So usually my husband and I just go up or down depending on what rooms we rent. And it's ocean view with a 60-foot infinity pool that was not supposed to be 60 feet. That was a metric English problem there. And it's just beautiful, and it's a place that I love because resorts are great and all inclusives are great and all that is you can have a really good time. But when people come here, I want people to feel like they live here, like they're living in Costa Rica. So it's quiet and private, and it came out beautifully, and I'm really proud of it. And so far, it's been going well.
It looks beautiful. We'll definitely link to it in the show notes. I checked that out, of course, before this interview too, and reached out to Nadine to see if it was free when we were going to be landing there. And of course, it's booked as it should be. It's a totally beautiful. It's the type of place we imagine living when we go. So at some point.
Yeah. Tom, thank you.
It's beautiful. It's beautiful. So we'll launch into those final 3 questions that we always end the interview with. And the first one is, what book or books up to 3 would you recommend that every human being read?
Oh, that's so great. Walk in the Woods by Bill Bryson. I loved that. Yeah, that's great. Anything by F. Scott Fitzgerald. His writing is so beautiful. Any book by him is great. And the last one, I feel like I should say the Bible, but everybody says that, so I don't want to say it because everybody says that. What do I always go back to? What book would I want to have with me at all times? Movable Feast by Hemingway. That's the one.
Beautiful.
Nice. Well, those are 3 ones we haven't heard before. Those are great. So, second question. After everything you've learned now at this point in your life, take us back to the Nadine before committing to that first path down the chiropractic road. If you could tell her something, what would you say? What would be your message to her at that juncture in her life?
Before chiropractic.
Yeah. Okay.
Before that. You're very small. You shouldn't be a chiropractor. That's what I would say to her, first off. That I never thought of. I'm 5 feet tall, 95 pounds. I never even considered like that my stature. Like, I mean, I might as well have been a linebacker for a football team. That's how ridiculous it is when you're this small. Okay, I would have told her that. And I would have said, smile more. Remember to smile. Even if you don't feel like it, just smile.
Yeah, we can all use that. The third question is, what are you most excited about now?
I'm excited about the book. It took 2 years to write, and I just love every chapter of that book. It's something that I want everybody to read. I've never felt this way about a book. So I feel really good about it. I'm really happy. It's nice to feel good about your work. That you did something good and you feel good about it, regardless of what happens. So I'm a little bit on a high with that right now.
That's great.
Beautiful.
That's really great. Well, I can remember when I was embedded. I always use the word embedded in my old corporate career. I would devour books like that where people talked about going for it and all the highs and lows. You're describing a 60-foot infinity pool being sort of a metric system mistake. Like that's actually very accessible and very exciting and very warming to people to realize, like, I don't have to have it figured out.
Yeah.
I don't have to have it all. I don't have to know everything in advance. I can just take the leap and it will work. And that's what I think I'm getting. One of the big themes here is that you have this kind of wonderful go for it spirit, dive in, risk it, it's going to work out, and it clearly has.
Because like you said, if you overthink it, you won't do it,
that's
right?
And didn't our ancestors come on the boat? Didn't they get on a boat? And could you imagine them seeing the Statue of Liberty? Could you imagine what that felt like? I think about that. They were brave people who got on a boat and came, and they didn't know anybody.
Yeah.
So we're way far ahead of that.
That's right.
So
that's a really, really brilliant point. Well, Nadine, before we sign off, where should people connect with you online, and what do you want people to know about what's coming up, knowing that we'll link to everything in the show notes? So tell us more about kind of how people should interface with you.
You can find me at happierthanabillionaire.com or just Google Happier Than Billionaire. I come up in a lot of different places. Facebook is a really great place for me, Happier Than Billionaire. That's very active, and we share lots of pretty pictures. I'm always sharing pictures of where I live and the things I see, and that's a great place to talk to me. So maybe we'll catch up there.
Awesome. Well, this has been really exciting
fun.
And inspiring for us, as I'm sure for many others, especially as we're right about to head down to Costa Rica. So it's just been wonderful talking to you.
Yeah, thank you so much, Nadine, for your time.
Pura vida.
That is it for this week's Ownstream podcast. Thanks so much for tuning in. We hope you enjoyed this awesome interview with Nadine Pisani. Be sure to check out the show notes for this episode for links to everything mentioned, including her website, books, including the newly released Happier Than a Billionaire and Acre in Paradise, and of course links to the other books she mentioned too. All of that can be found at ownstream.co/Nadine Pisani. That's ownstream.co/NADINE PISANI.
Also, please sign up for our weekly tip-off email at ownstream.co and just click the sign up button in the upper right-hand corner. This is where we share each Monday 3 cool things we've learned in the last week in the areas of lifestyle, business, and spirit. This could be an amazing quote, individual tip, or tool designed to bring you more freedom and power in your life. So definitely sign up for that again at ownstream.co and just click sign up.
Finally, as I said earlier, please leave us a review on iTunes. We really need your help in expanding our reach, helping us to inspire more people and spread the amazing ideas discussed on this episode with Nadine Pisani and others too. If it feels right to you, simply go to iTunes, search for the Ownstream podcast, click ratings and reviews, then click that 5th star and leave us a brief comment on how this episode has inspired you. Thank you so much for considering that. We are very grateful. Also, we're on Twitter at Ownstream and on Instagram where we post regularly at own_stream. Thanks so much, and we'll talk to you next week.
Thanks for listening to the Ownstream podcast. To learn more and connect with us, please visit ownstream.co or follow us on Twitter at Ownstream and Instagram at own_stream.